Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Digital Learning Day. We have a jam-packed session today of not just everything digital literacy, but also applied digital literacy across different contexts. We have here today, well, I'm just going to share this one link with you guys so that way you have it. We had launched an update on digital navigators on the website. There's a post that we shared in the chat. We're going to have a lunch and learn next Friday next week. So if you're interested to know a little bit more about that, you could click on the post and you could register. And to not take too much time, I want to kick off with Jeff Gomez, which is our first presenter. He is presenting today on Closing the Gap, Harnessing the Power of the Bridges Digital Resilience Toolkit. That might sound familiar to some of you already. Jeff Gomez is the Senior Technical Advisor for World Education. In this role, he implements a range of teacher professional development initiatives focused on digital literacy and supporting adult educators in building evidence-based and tech strategies into their instructional routines. In addition, he leads World Education's Crowded Learning Initiative, which works to expand access to and awareness of high quality, free and open educational resources. Crowded Learning is an excellent resource, by the way. It's one of the resources that we use also here. So with that said, thank you, Jeff Gomez, for presenting for us today. If you have any questions or concerns or you want to participate, it's used to chat. And with that, let's get started. Thank you, Jeff.
All right. So can everyone see my screen first of all and hear me? I guess that's all right. Thank you, Jose.
Yes.
All right. So thank you for that introduction and good morning and welcome. And I hope you have a excellent day. Honored to be able to kick it off with you. As Jose mentioned, some of you, many of you may be familiar with the Bridges Digital Resilience Toolkit. This is a toolkit that World Education has kind of amassed over the past 5 years. Over over time, starting in 2019, when we launched a national initiative called Digital Us, which was focused on understanding where there were digital skills gaps and what were some of the root causes of that, as well as finding sort of promising practices that were happening throughout the country, not just in adult education settings and community-based organizations and digital navigation settings, even in workforce training settings. And from that work, what emerged was a need for more definition of digital skills for programs to actually be able to implement digital skills training. When you think about what we do as educators in, say, math, reading, and language, we have very clear frameworks and standards that define what it is that we're supposed to teach. And then with that, publishers create materials, we create materials to ensure that our learners can develop those skills. But without those definitions, it's hard to know what you're supposed to teach and how you're supposed to teach it. So Bridges aims to solve that, starting with a digital skills framework. So in today's session, we have an hour together today. We're going to focus on what I just said, defining digital skills really, and just considering what are digital skills and what does that mean. Now you notice the name of the toolkit is the Bridges Digital Resilience Toolkit, and we're going to talk about what skills mean, what digital literacy means, and what digital resilience means. And the materials that are in here are meant to really help us move learners towards that digital resilience, which we'll define in a moment. And within that, we're going to take a learner-centered approach. So one of the things that I'm really excited to be able to, I'm excited about what Connecticut is doing, is they've taken Bridges and really done a lot with it in terms of considering what are the skills and most importantly, what are the materials that you could use based on your learners' proficiency levels. And they've done some actually honing in of resources for you that I'll point out during the course of today's session. But the way that we're going to actually walk through the Bridges framework is going to actually be picking a learner. I'm going to give you 3 learner personas. And with that learner in mind, we're going to walk through the various resources in the toolkit that are available so you can see how you can use the toolkit with a learner in mind, first for identifying the skills that that learner needs, and then for building the digital skills that that learner needs once you've identified their skill goals. And then we'll point out a couple key resources for you. This is going to be very interactive. There's a session Padlet that I'm going to have you jump into, and that's where you're going to be kind of documenting what you find in the toolkit as we do this. So consider this sort of a scavenger hunt of sorts as we walk through the toolkit and consider a learner. So what I'm going to start off with is two videos. Neither of these videos has sound. And I believe the chat is enabled. Looks like it is, yes. So these videos don't have sound. This first one we're going to watch, and then as you're watching or at the end, I want you to type in the chat, what digital skills do you see at play? So this person is doing something with technology. What are the skills that they need in order to do what you are watching? Digital skills, not baking skills. All right, so in the chat, what digital skills did that person need in order to do what you just saw? Camera, navigating the site, buttons, how to record, keyboard, accessing keyboards on a phone, logging in. They had to log into that application, recognizing icons, keyboard familiarity. This is great. Typing and logging. Awesome. What were they actually doing? What were they doing in that video? Getting around the site, posting on social media. Yeah. So so one of the things that as I'm looking at these answers, the term post is a digital term, right? It's a digital skills term. Social media is a digital skills term. Navigation is a digital skills term. The keyboard. So one of the things that we're going to be talking about today, and some of the resources we're going to be looking at, is to be very intentional about language. Because if a learner can't explain what it is they're doing, then do they necessarily even know what it is they're doing? Or if they're not able to actually put words to the tasks that they're doing. Yes, they could do that task in Facebook, as you saw, but if you ask them to post in something else, do they know what that even means? If they haven't actually associated the fact that if I'm putting information onto a social media site, that is called posting. The second scenario, also no sound, and now we're looking on a desktop computer at somebody doing a digital task. So go ahead and watch, and as you're watching, feel free to document what digital skills do you see at play. All right, so we see scrolling, typing, and one of the things that I learned over the course of the past few years in working in this space, and just never observed for myself, is that the keyboard on a computer is all capital letters, whereas the keyboard on a phone is all lowercase letters. And just, oops, didn't even think of that because I'm a native English speaker. But like knowing those differences, that's an important thing to recognize and to point out for learners. Finding and opening an application, in this case, Microsoft Word, saving a document, um, searching for functions, keyboard and mouse use, saving to a folder versus maybe saving to a cloud. So all of these are skills that in the first case, actually, the reason I do these two scenarios, also, the first case, when we're thinking about our learners and thinking about a human-centered approach to digital skill instruction, many of your learners may already use something like Facebook. They use probably their phone. So how can you help empower that learner to understand what skills they are already bringing to the table, what skills they're actually already engaging with their current technology use? So that's a really important first step. But then in the second case, this is a digital skill, a set of digital skills that one probably needs regardless of whatever type of workplace environment they're going to be working in, certainly in future education and even personal use. So when we're talking about identifying digital skills and digital goal setting, it's about thinking about what skills does the learner come to the table with, but then also what skills will the learner need based on their personal academic or career goals. The other reason I also show this second version is many learners in many educational settings that we work in may not have robust access to Wi-Fi or the internet, but you can be teaching digital skills even in offline environments. There's so many digital skills that you can be teaching with Word and Excel or Docs and Sheets and PowerPoint that are transferable skills that allow learners to build digital resilience. And so I want to point that out as well. So when we're talking about digital skills, we're looking at trying to move people from having basic skills to being resilient. And this is sort of that pathway from skills to literacy to resilience. So skills are defined as the range of abilities needed to use devices, to communicate using technology, and to access and manage information. So in that first example, opening an application, taking a video, uploading and posting and sharing, those are all sort of minute skills. In Microsoft Word, in Microsoft Excel, or any sort of productivity suite, there are the basic skills that one needs in order to use those applications, formatting texts, saving, opening a file. Those are all kind of the rudimentary basic skills. When we move into literacy, we're adding a layer of thinking, of cognitive awareness of what it is I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So in the first example, there are multiple social media platforms that exist. So which social media platform should I use? Who should I share this with? Should I share it with everybody? Should I post this at all? Which obviously, when we're in certain political climates, is a really important thing to consider. In the second example, when we're looking at saving, where should I save? Should I save to the cloud? Should I save to my computer? Do I need to bring this somewhere else that's not going to have Wi-Fi access? So I use something like a flash drive or a USB drive. So these are digital literacy dynamics, and knowing what it is I'm doing and when I should do it. Digital resilience, though, again, this is the goal for us. And the reason we need digital resilience is, as you are all aware, technology is rapidly changing. And what you needed to know today is not necessarily what you need to know tomorrow. And so adapting to the changing digital skills demand requires that somebody has digital resilience. And what that means is it's not just, I know how to do this particular thing with this particular tool in this particular setting, but it's knowing that if I'm posting something, say to Facebook in the first example, when I'm in an educational digital setting with a new tool like Canvas or Moodle, my teacher is going to ask me to post something to a discussion board. I know what posting is, and it's not this immediate barrier where I don't even know what you're asking me to do. It's having the fluency that allows me to be able to transfer a skill I can use in one application to a skill in another application. If you're working with learners towards job readiness, they might have to post a resume or upload a resume to something like Indeed. Those are all transferable skills, and so having the learner know the basics of what it is they're doing is critical for them to be resilient. When you look at something like productivity software, most of the functions across Docs, Sheets, and Slides, or PowerPoint, Word, and Excel are the same. Formatting features for text, filling in or creating outlines on objects, they're all the same exact set of steps. But every time, say, you see a text field in one of those applications or elsewhere, there's a set of things that you know you should be able to do. You should be able to boldface it. You should be able to create a bulleted or a numbered list. You should be able to add a hyperlink. So it's having the awareness that when I'm engaged in this type of feature on any technology, there's a set of expectations. So it's not just not knowing what I could do, it's assuming I should be able to do something and having the resilience to figure it out, to find it, to ask the question on, say, a help menu. And that's what we're trying to move our learners towards. So what we're going to be looking at today is a set of resources called the Bridges Digital Resilience Toolkit. I guess I should change this. I don't know what happened to my title of this slide. And this, again, is a tool that has a range of resources that we've pulled together, aligned to a single skills framework so that you can help move learners towards that digital resilience. Organized in 10 domains, and these are the 10 domains listed here. And it's based on an original work from the City of Seattle, their Digital Equity Initiative, and the University of Washington. And the reason we've used this as the basis for Bridges is because they built a framework by looking at other frameworks. So in 2019, they conducted a study where they looked at a variety of digital skills frameworks and digital skills curricula and digital skills assessments. And they created a comparison framework by looking at those and identifying what were the most commonly featured skills that were defined in any of those different environments. What's being assessed, what's being taught, what's being identified as being critical. And so that's how they arrived at these 75 skills, and they organized them into 10 domains. And within what they compared, they looked at things like GCF Learn Free or GCF Global now, the ISTE standards for students, and the North Star Digital Literacy Assessment. So some things that you may already be familiar with, those were factored in. And the reason we like that is because we know people may be using those various resources, and we've provided crosswalks to them. So if you're already using North Star, we've identified, well, these are the skills and bridges that you might want to be focusing on with your learners. If you're using ISTE, these are the skills and bridges that have resources that align to those skills. So I'm going to share and hop into, that's not what I want to hop into. So that one. I'm going to share this link in the chat, and this is to the Bridges main page. You're going to see there's a Bridges interactive. I'm going to say hold off on hopping into that. What I'm actually going to share is the PDF version, or actually the docs version is now available. But if you go to that URL, actually I will share the PDF only because you may not all necessarily be Google Docs people. But here's the PDF version of the toolkit. And I want you to scroll to page 18. I'll type that in the chat just as a reference. And the only reason I'm doing that is this is the one place where all of the skills are listed in one place. It actually starts on page 19. So this is where you can see everything start to finish in terms of all 75 skills and the 10 domains. And so you'll see there are domains such as communication, creation, device ownership, gateway skills, information skills, lifelong learning, mobile skills, online life, privacy and security, and workplace and productivity. So take a look at that, and we're going to move on into thinking about the two scenarios that we looked at. So again, if you're in the document, page 18 is where it starts. Those are the domains, and then 19 through 20 something, 25, I believe, or 23 are all the skills. So things like verify secure websites or create documents. So in the chat, thinking about the two scenarios I showed, For either scenario, if you could identify the bridges skill that you saw. So we named off skills based on our terminology that we know. Now I want to transfer that to, okay, which bridges skill actually is at play there? So mobile is the domain. Mobile 6, collaborate using mobile tools. That is absolutely one of the skills that was shown in scenario 1. What other bridges skills did you see? So gateway skills or essential foundations, save and find documents. So that was something that happened in scenario 2. Okay, workplace and productivity. 7, create documents. That's a big skill, a set of more fine skills, but all of the skills related to creating documents, which I think to me is one of the most important skills. Posting on social media, CO4, understanding databases, maybe, I guess. Database is a specific type of tool, but databases are increasingly important. I've become very proficient in databases in my work lately because of pulling together things such as this website here. Okay, the point here is I want to help us navigate. So thank you, information skills 6. I don't know what that is. It might be storing information. EF1. Not. You think I've memorized these? I've kind of come close. Saving and managing content, organizing information in files. That's what IS6 is. Yeah. So these are all the actual discrete skills that were demonstrated. In these 2 scenarios, and there's many more. But again, this is just to help you understand how to dive into bridges when you're thinking about what skills do learners have or what skills do learners need. So now we're going to actually walk through the toolkit, and we're going to walk through all of these resources. And what we're going to be doing with these is you're going to look at 3 learners, and you're going to pick a learner that you want to focus on. And with that learner, you're going to identify skills that are relevant to that learner. And then we're going to basically walk through identifying the skills that learner needs based on their scenario, and then find resources that help them build those digital skills in the Bridges toolkit. And so we're going to walk through all of these different resources that are available within the toolkit. And so the point of having all these things as one place is by having the framework, we are able to define the skills that are needed to support one's goals. And then with each of those skills, we actually provide relevant examples. So what does this skill look like in life, at work, for education? And we also have, what does this skill look like for teachers and trainers? Because we also recognize that in order for us to teach digital skills, the educators need to be proficient in digital skills as well. So we provide these examples that are relevant for every single one of the 75 skills, just to make some connection to what learners might want to do or need to do with that skill in mind. And then around those skills and skill examples, we have thousands of resources that align to that, and that's what we're going to walk through. So just last month, we launched the interactive version of Bridges. And so the PDF is one that you can download if you want, hold on to. There's a docs version of it if you wanted to take the docs version and save it, make a copy, adapt it however you see fit. This is an open resource. But we're going to use the interactive version to dive through everything today. So I'll go back to the page to show you where that is in a second. But from the interactive version, there's the 10 domains. You can click on any domain, and you can open up this page that is the landing page for that domain. And then you can see the skills, the vocabulary, the tools, associated resources, as well as, I forgot to change this, it's called empowering practices now. Just so you're aware, for any discrepancies, I'm going to change this in the slides before I share them. So In the toolkit, if you go to this main page, and I'll share the link again, the interactive version of Bridges is right here. You just click Explore Bridges Interactive. And so then all 10 of those domains, you'll see they're actually organized into 3 sort of broader buckets of foundational skills, productivity skills, and independent learning skills. And if you click on any of these, you get an overview of the domain. And then when you click on any of the buttons, this is where you see all of the skills. And I'll dive into this a little bit more in a second, but the vocabulary, relevant tools, resources, empowering practices. So this is what we're going to use now for the rest of our morning together. So the first set of resources I want to look at within Bridges are resources to help identify digital skills. So the other link that I'm going to share is to this Padlet. If you have a phone and you want to play around on your mobile device, feel free to scan that and use your device, and maybe you don't like having multiple tabs. In the chat, I'm going to post a link to the Padlet. So the 2 links you see from me in the chat, one is to Bridges Interactive. The second one is to this Padlet. And the Padlet is something that we're going to use to actually document our learning as we're going. And so we're going to be walking through the framework, and we're going to be looking at these 3 learners in a second and identifying the skills that are important to them. And then we're going to walk through these resources in order to think about the materials that are going to be relevant from Bridges for your learner in mind. So the first thing are the skills and the relevant examples. So as I mentioned at the start, I showed 2 different examples. And the reason for that was thinking both about the skills learners come to the table with, as well as the skills that learners need. So for every single one of the skills, if you navigate through the Bridges framework, you'll see a list of skills. This is the hard copy. But even in the hard copy, you can go through, and for every single skill, we list out, what does this skill look like in my life, in my work, in my education, and as a teacher or trainer? And these are just individual examples. There are many others. But the point of this is to help establish relevance, both for you and for learners. If you have other examples that are more relevant to learners, you can feel free to use those. But we feel these are really important for establishing relevance. We feel these are really great examples if you want to do some sort of self-assessment of learners in terms of what do you know how to do. We also feel these are helpful if you want to sort of build something more performance-based to ask a learner to show you how to do one of these different examples. So that's how to use these I can statements, as we call them. And these are available for every single one of the skills. So now we're going to walk through 3 learners. And I want you to, as I read through, decide if that's the learner. First of all, think about the digital skills that person needs, and then just decide if this is a learner that is similar to one that you might be working with, so that we can go through this journey with somebody that's relevant to your practice. So our first learner is Farhana, and Farhana is an Afghan refugee who is comfortable using her mobile device, but she has never used a computer. She wants to learn how to use a computer so she can begin exploring local community services. Okay. Second person, Alejandro. Alejandro is a US citizen from Mexico who has been looking for a part-time job, but has been told repeatedly he has to apply online. Our third learner is Akisha. Akisha has enrolled in the school's HighFlex GED program. In the program, students have the option to attend classes remotely via Zoom, and they're encouraged to submit assignment or expected to submit assignments via the school's learning management system. So with these 3 learners in mind, just real recap, Farhana, comfortable with mobile device, needs to learn how to use a computer to explore local services. Alejandro needs to apply for jobs online. And Akisha is enrolled in a program where she needs to be able to use all of the features and functions for remote learning and using a learning management system. All right, so given that, I want you to go to the Padlet, and then for one of these learners, or more than one learner if you want, if you're a go-getter, identify by adding a comment what skills would be important for each of these learners. Or maybe what skills they already have based on the descriptions. But we're going to focus more on the goal setting aspect now. And within that, using the bridges skills. Oh, sure, I can show the scenarios again. We have Farhana, who's an Afghan refugee, comfortable using her mobile device, never used a computer. She wants to use a computer to explore local services. Alejandro, looking for jobs online or needs to apply for jobs online. And then Akisha is enrolled in a high flex program, and so she needs to be able to engage in class remotely via Zoom and submit assignments via her LMS. Awesome, so I'm seeing some things pop in now. Navigating a computer and understanding the basics. So the gateway skills domain for Farhana, yeah, like pretty much all of those skills if she's not comfortable or has never used a computer. So that's obviously going to place to start for her. What other skills do these folks need? All right, gateway skills, foundational skills. Any for Alejandro? Here we go. Save and find documents. Jennifer will need to know how to do that, absolutely, for her own management, and then um, uploading to her LMS, saving, managing content, privacy and security are things that she'll need. So that as a domain, searching the internet will be something that Alejandro needs. Saving and managing content, absolutely. Like part of that job taking process is starting to document and identify your skills, build out a resume so that you can upload those. Find jobs online, excellent, awesome. File management tools creation. So there's a host of different skills that are relevant for each of these learners, and that's going to be different for each learner. There's more universal skills that everyone needs, obviously. But when thinking about what the skill goals are for each of these learners, Bridges allows you to kind of tailor that and identify the skills that are going to be most relevant for each person. One of the features that I want to make note of is, and this was one of the newer additions that we did last year, are the empowering practices. And that's a tab in each of the domains that basically provides context of how this learner might be approaching learning about, say, communication skills, because they have different contexts and they have different experiences. So what practitioners and programs should be aware of before teaching or running any sort of digital skills programming, and what they can do to be inclusive when teaching. So in the empowering practices, so this is like an awareness piece for social media. While some learners may rely on it as their communication tools, others might be actually wary of it. And so we need to make sure that we are understanding of that and respectful. So taking action related to this particular dynamic would be speaking to the pros and cons and respecting learners' choices as to whether or not and how they use social media within any type of programming that you're using. So, this happens in life. Like I live in a condo building, and I was like, we should create a Facebook page, like for like a group for our condo. And there are a lot of people that are like, just don't want to use Facebook. And so that is limiting for people to be able to participate and engage. And so we've had to think of other ways that are more private, that fit people's comfort levels in order to be able to engage. And that's being empowering to the people that you're trying to work with and to serve. The other things that are provided in each domain are vocabulary and tools. And so when we're thinking about this defining digital skills and identifying digital skills needs for folks, one of the things we need to be mindful of from the start is what terms are learners going to need. So if we're asking them about things, we need to make sure that they understand what these terms are. So every single domain has a vocabulary list and a set of vocabulary slides. We'll look at those in more depth in a moment. Every domain also has tools. And the reason we put these tools in there, and these are all linked in the online version, is so that you can consider, well, what tools might I actually use within my instruction or within our programming that could help learners develop these skills? Or if we are using these tools and requiring them for use, such as for Hannah, Akisha at the end, who was in the HighFlex program, work backwards from that. What skills do learners need in order to effectively use those tools? So when you're considering your programming, having these tools helps you define, say, the requirements of learners if they're going to be able to fully participate. It also could be used to think about these skill goals for learners. What tools are they going to know how to use in order to be able to participate in whatever their goals are? And maybe you find out ways to develop the skills that they need for using those tools. So again, these materials within the framework or within the toolkit, excuse me, are designed to really help you center what you're doing with learners as it relates to digital skills around each of those learners. And then to further support that, there's a set of checklists for self-assessment and goal setting. And I'm going to launch that here and share it in the chat. And then momentarily, I'm going to just show you where all of these things actually live in the toolkit so that you're not seeing things in one way, but then not able to find them when you're on your own. So these these checklists were developed actually based on the original Seattle framework. And their document report that they had listed out sort of these user types. So people looking for skills for employment, people who are senior citizens, parents, folks who are going into education, beginning users, skills for life, mobile users. And what these are basically taking the full framework and winnowing it down to the skills that are important for that sort of more generalized type of learner. We're looking to refine this a little bit more and actually provide a little bit more specificity on these user types. But those are basically listings of the core skills. So again, this is focusing on communication, privacy and security, and workforce and productivity as the skills for someone who's got a goal of employment. The other resources in here, it's the full checklist with these columns that you can adjust as you see fit. So you can make a copy of this. So we, by default, just put these 3 columns in, and this actually is similar to what's available from like the Department of Labor. They have basically these competency models, and they have these documents that allow for training providers and employers to connect and identify like which of these skills are priorities, so that training programs can use that as the basis for any sort of training. So you can use these as you see fit in terms of selecting the skills that you want to focus on. The other resource that we have in here is all of the I can statements in one place. So this is the full list of every single skill. with all of the I can statements. And what I'll show you is actually these are all hyperlinked to jump into the toolkit specifically to that skill page. So use social media was one of the skills we mentioned. If you click on this, it's going to open the Bridges toolkit and it's going to bring you straight to the page, use social media. It has those I can statements, and then it has a bunch of learning resources that are all aligned to use social media. So one of the materials on this website is a digital skills library that's just all of the resources. This is now more refined with our interactive toolkit. You can literally go to any skill and see a bunch of different resources that you could use for developing that particular skill. The last thing I want to show in here in terms of when we're thinking about prioritizing skills is these self-assessment checklists. So one of the things we know exists is like North Star Digital Literacy. It's a great resource. We've heard a lot of folks say maybe the language is too high or it's a little too overwhelming for many of their learners. So we've compiled really sample checklists using other things that folks have used for defining or identifying skills that learners need as the basis for things that you could use as is, or things that you can adapt. So for example, in thinking about going back to Akeisha, she had to learn how to use all of these tools in order to engage in programming. There's a program in Washington, D.C. called BRIA. They're a public charter school. And when they moved to remote learning during COVID, they created a checklist of the things that learners needed in order to participate in their programming. And so all of these templates are available as a Google Doc and as a Google form. So I'm going to show you the Google form version. It's a template. When you launch it, it opens up this, and if you want to use this form, you could click Use Template, and it makes a copy of the form for you. Each of these, when the learner submits it, has the listing of the skills that they need for each of these things. So you can use that as a way of helping prioritize what the learner might need. If you want to use the Google Docs version, you can do that as well. And each one of these is same exact questions, but organized into these areas. And it's these I can statements. And so the reason we have those I can statements is it's trying to make the connection. If you want to use those as the basis for self-assessment, I can do this. That's the way you are able to sort of self-assess and hone in on what the learner needs to know how to do or what the learner already knows how to do. We have yet to do this because the toolkit, the interactive toolkit is so new. But in the next few weeks, at least by COABE, all of these are going to be hyperlinked in the same way that I showed you on the spreadsheet. So you would have this checklist, and then that checklist can jump you directly into the Bridges Interactive Toolkit and find learning resources for that learner. Sorry. And then the other thing in terms of defining skills, because you may use these tools, we have crosswalks to North Star, to ISTE, to DigComp, which is a European Union framework, and the Department of Labor recently released a set of their digital skills framework for workplace. We are in the process of aligning that as well. So if you're participating in, say, IET or do IET programming, that might be helpful for using that as a basis for what skills you want to prioritize. But for all of these, when you open up any of the crosswalks, if this is a skill the learner a North Star needs to work on, these are the skills that align. And again, in the document, we actually have added links so that you can click on it and launch that page that has all of the skill resources for it. So just to show you in the framework where all of those things are, I'm going to go back to my communication domain. So those vocabulary lists are here on the vocabulary tab. The skills pages with all the I can statements, you click on any of these and it launches, here's one of them. with all of those resources. The tools pages is here. And so this lists out those tools, and all of these are linked as they can be to the different tools. And then the resources are here. And so one of the things that you can do is every single domain has the checklists right here. It's the crosswalks and the checklists are the first two things listed for every single domain. So they're in the appendix to the in the hard copy, but in the interactive version, these are all connected here. And then all the individual checklists are here. So if I want to see the checklists that I can use for this particular domain, these are all the checklists that have communication skills in them. And then the empowering practices, those are the last tab, and this provides you with all of this information related to making sure that you're being sort of learner-centered in your approach to digital skills development. So now we're going to dive into the resources that you can use to build digital skills. Now, I've already shown you that you can launch into a skill-specific page that has all of these resources. And the reason we've done that is we recognize there were lots of great materials out there, but as you as an educator have to go to that website and then sift through to find the particular activity that relates to a skill. And most of these things aren't necessarily organized by our framework. So Jose was part of this work. There might have been other folks in Connecticut, but we've run a number of EdTech makerspaces, which and sometimes when we run them, it's curating resources to skills frameworks. And in this case, we looked at websites like GCF, like Digital Learn, like Google Applied Digital Skills, and educators helped us to align the activities within those websites to this framework. And that's what allows us, when I said I've learned how to use databases in my work, that's what I'm talking about. Because we just have this massive database, an Airtable that has, we're actually at almost 2,000 activities now that support digital skills instruction. And by using the framework, you can dive directly to the materials that you want to use. Now, one thing I want to point out is Jose is a busy beaver as well, and he and his team have been further aggregating those resources to a set of 3 curricula that you could use that align to bridges. So I'm just going to click on this. You may or may not be aware of this. There may be a session today. I don't know, Jose. If there is one on this in particular, but I really like this. Go ahead.
No, not
Yes?
today.
No, not today. Okay. But essentially, it's got a guide for thinking about which of these 3 curricula you might use. And we have not added Dart to our toolkit yet, but we need to. But this moves from more of a basic skills and very like terminology focused. North Star is the curriculum that's aligned to the North Star Digital Literacy. Applied Digital Skills is more project oriented. But if I click on any of these, what they've done is they've taken these very same domains and they have basically identified all of the things from each one of these resources to the skills in that domain. So I really like, this is amazing work, but it allows you to, if you like and your learners respond well to, say, apply digital skills, this is a way for you to very quickly find activities that might relate to skills, or projects in this case, that relate to skills they may need. Now, I showed you that we have many more in Bridges, and so you can feel free to use this to augment and find additional activities that you might want to use. And these, our framework allows you to sort by resource, by the format, and even by the language. In this case, for this skill, evidently they're all in English, but we do have a number of Spanish resources as well within the toolkit. Whoops, I didn't mean to click on that. Within ours, we also do have a number of foreign language videos or multilingual video videos from the International Rescue Committee. We also have a guide for materials for offline resources. Lisa, no, there's no, this is just more of a library. This isn't a login. This is for teachers to find resources that they might want to use and then embed into their instruction how they see fit. You certainly could send learners to one of those skill pages, but you'd probably want to provide some guidance on how they might sift through them if you want them to self-explore. So the digital skills glossary is another resource that's embedded into the toolkit. And I already showed you where those terms are. I'm going to go here, but if I go to this vocabulary tab, I can see that I can open in Google Sheets. That's actually all the terms that we have throughout the toolkit, but I can open in Google Slides a set of slides that has the terms for just this particular domain. And what you can see here is there is definitions, there is the words in a sentence, and then there's an image that goes along with it. There's also a link, if I go into slideshow mode, to the audio that actually speaks this word, provides the pronunciation. This is an open resource that you can make a copy of and you can adjust and adapt as you see fit. And just I want to and then we also have a guide that goes with it with activities for how to use these slides to actually build digital resilience. And again, when thinking about this terminology and language, the reason language is important is if I understand things like comment, follow, like, post, and share, those are all things that I would do in LinkedIn. Those are all things I would do in Instagram. Those are all things I would do in Facebook. Those are transferable terms and skills. And so helping learners understand what that looks like in different settings makes them more resilient. And so this has a bunch of educator created activities that show how to use those terms. I also want to point out a course that was developed using these slides by a Chamber of Commerce. So they actually took the slides and they built out an entire computer basics course using these slides as the basis. They also translated many of the terms into Spanish, and they created their own set of slides using the Spanish version as well. So that is not something that's in Bridges. This is more of an example of what you could do with it. So I want to point out that link in the chat. So if you want to explore this, and you can see their different curriculum, but they built an entire curriculum based on terminology. Again, I just find that to be really, really important. The other thing that we merged into the framework, the toolkit, was the EdTech Integration Strategy Toolkit, which this was a thing that we developed about 4 years ago, where we knew that teachers wanted to be more strategic and thoughtful about integrating technology into their instruction. And so we had them, we pulled together this toolkit that identified routines that you might do. So things you might do on a regular basis, exit tickets, or creating online bulletin boards like Padlet for students to respond to, so that it's a routine that students are used to, they engage with it. They know what they're doing every time you say, hey, we're going to do a collaborative activity in Padlet. And the toolkit, which is an app, allows you to search by tool and see routines that you can do with that tool. And then it also linked out to the skills that one can be focused on when you're doing something. Say, if we're using Padlet, Padlet is very similar to posting, and posting on social media is one of the skills. This is that transferable skills. I've been asking you to post in Padlet. That's a skill, right? So making sure we're making connections between the skills we're having learners do in what when we're using technology and employing it in our instruction. So we've had this toolkit for a number of years, but now in that resources page in the toolkit, you can go to the resources for any domain and click on routine, and that will show you all of these various routines that you could do that employ skills from that domain. And this is what it looks like. It basically says what it is, why you would do this skill, how you would do the skill, and then the digital skills that learners are developing when you actually are doing this particular routine. The final thing I'm going to show you is a platform called Skill Blocks. And so one of the questions was about logging in and such. In Bridges, no, there's no logging in. These are just resources that for you to find, for you to explore, for you to consider how you might use with your learners. Skillblocks is a platform that we have developed at World Education that actually has everything in the digital skills library, but allows you to create lessons and to create what you see here, which is a block that pulls together various resources and activities from the toolkit into, say, a sequenced lesson. And these lessons are things that learners can access simply with a code. They don't need to have an account, but learners can create an account. And then when they save skill blocks to their account, it actually does track what they're doing. So I'm going to launch out into skill blocks and I'm going to share the link to it with you. And one thing you'll notice if you're not a skill blocks user, or if you're a former skill blocks user or have used it before, our dashboard has changed significantly. But I could jump to blocks that have been created in any one of these areas. One of them is digital literacy. So if I click on this, I can launch to see these lessons that people have created that they've tagged to digital skills. And so these are all basically blocks that folks have created. I'm going to open up this one here on hoaxes and fakes. And you can see details about what's in it. It actually, these are aligned to the Teaching Skills That Matter framework. So if people have tagged their block, it indicates what TSTM skills they align to. And we can see that this lesson focuses on evaluating online information, which is one of the Bridges skills. When I launch it, I can see that this is a sequenced set of activities focused on digital skills that this educator has created. I could save this, I could share this with my students. If Mary had made that public, I could make a copy of it and adjust it as I see fit. Oh, you know what? I'm not in my browser. That's going to allow me to do this. Let me do. I know we're at the end. But just to that point about learners, so if I log in as a learner, in this case, learners can save all the blocks that they've worked on, and then I can, when they mark activities complete, it shows what activities they've completed. It shows what skills, if the activities have been aligned to specific skills they've worked on. And I think that's not showing up because but they have this sort of dashboard of what they've been working on, how much time they've worked on, and what skills they've worked on, and they can share access to their data with you. There's a whole lot to learn about skill blocks, and I'd be happy to come back and do a session on skill blocks for folks who want to use it, but this is pulling all those things together into actual lessons. So we are at time. And just really quickly, some resources that I didn't cover, but in the resources tab, we do have a tool called the EdTech Integration Action Plan. This is a resource that allows you to walk through and think about how you want to develop digital skills with your learners, whether you want to do project-based or explicit instruction, picking skills, selecting resources that you want to use and pulling it together into an action plan for your own self. I also want to note that on the main page of Bridges, the print framework, the PDF and doc is available in Spanish, so that is available for you as well. And if you want to contact me or follow World Education or Crowded Learning, here are all of those links. And Jose will be sharing out the slides after today's session, and that's that.
Thank
Any
you so questions? much for presenting and sharing all the updates. I didn't know about the latest updates for the skill blocks. I haven't been there recently, so that looks very exciting. There is a question.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they were asking about offline resources. I did share like Google Applied Digital Skills. You could download videos.
Yeah,
There, but do you know? I forgot the name. I think that was one that did.
here, I'm going to share this in the chat. and I actually don't know if this is in the toolkit yet. So this is a resource we developed for another project through Octave. We're hoping it gets extended and allows us to build in the offline resources into Bridges. So we're waiting on that. I will say that if you are a Skill Blocks user, one of the things that we've already put in there is, well, I've never used this in this. We've added all the GCF Learn Free tutorials into skill blocks. And so if I go into here, and I'm just going to do this really quickly, I think that should. So many of the GCF tutorials are available as offline downloads, and I might have broken this. It may not show up right away, and we don't have it filtered. But basically, from that this document that I just shared, this page leads you to all of the GCF tutorials. If you click on any of these, it downloads it like the whole package, and you can watch the videos and everything offline. But other things are digitallearn.org has PDFs of every single one of their modules. The Digital Citizen curriculum is all Google's materials, so you can save them and make them available offline. Crash Course has some great resources, and this link has downloads of their videos so that you can again have those offline. Digital Unite has great training guides that you can print offline, and Applied Digital Skills, also all the videos can be downloaded and used offline. So we want to actually pull these into the library as well, so that we can point you directly to each one of the offline resources by skill. We're just waiting for funding, hopefully, on that. Any other questions?
Thank you again so much for presenting for us. I will definitely follow up with you. There's a couple of things
Yeah.
as always, as usual, that I'm interested in reaching out for. Um, our next session is AI in career guidance, elevating your career using generative AI. That's with David Ferreira, and that's going to start at 10:15. So you have 10 minutes almost break. So just know you have it's a different link, so you have to go back to your Zoom links and click on the next one. Okay. See everyone soon.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Jose, as always.